A lock ring is an elastic string preload fitting mechanically attached. Only the certified lock ring installer shall perform the following. Inspect to ensure pipe ends are cut square plus or minus 5 degrees. Deburr pipe ends. Perform surface prep. To properly install a lock ring fitting, the following tools will be required. A lock ring marine toolkit. It should consist of a lock ring head and a multi-purpose gauge. A pump and hose will be needed to attach the fitting hydraulically. The use of an indelible pen or Sharpie will also be required. And aluminum oxide cloth with grade 120 to 150 will be used. However, no flapper wheels permitted. It is absolutely imperative that the material type be positively identified before the kit is acquired, as the size of the lock ring heads and the colors of the multi-purpose gauge change depending on the material makeup. The copper nickel 9010 gauge, which is what we're using today, will be red. Copper nickel 7030 will be gold. Crest will have a gray metallic appearance. The lock ring fitting will also be stamped with the type of material that you will be installing for positive identification. Ensure that the pipe ends are cut square plus or minus 5 degrees by placing the pipe inside the multi-purpose gauge and rotating the pipe. If the pipe is not cut square, it will be visible inside the gauge. Use the no-go cutaway in the multi-purpose gauge to check the pipe size. Undersized pipe will pass through the gauge. The pipe should be checked in the sealing zone. Place the gauge lightly against the outside diameter of the pipe. Do not force the pipe through the no-go cutaway. The pipe is the correct size if it will not pass through the gauge. The pipe should be cleaned in the sealing zone, which is required to be 1.5 times the diameter of the pipe. The pipe should not be cleaned along the length of the pipe, but around the curvature of the pipe. This will allow the pipe to be adequately cleaned without leaving longitudinal scratches that could cause leaking. Use the multi-purpose gauge to mark the install and inspect marks. The gauge should be placed on the end of the pipe and marked with the indelible pen or Sharpie. The gauge should be installed halfway into the coupling, and the pipe should be installed halfway to meet the gauge. The install mark should be partially covered and partially visible. The area between the coupling and the gauge should be tight with no gap visible. If there is any space in this area, the pipe will not be installed in the correct position. A good indication that the fitting has satisfactorily locked is a clicking noise. However, the fitting should be visually inspected by way of the inspection mark made by the multi-purpose gauge. Only a simple 3-point visual check of each lock ring connection is needed to verify successful inspection. 1. Verify that the trailing edge of the fitting body protrudes from underneath the end of the drive ring. 2. Verify that the inspect mark is partially covered by the fitting and that most or all of the install mark is exposed. 3. Verify that the drive ring butts up against the tool flange. A small gap is acceptable as long as conditions 1 and 2 are met. Once the first side is complete, the second side will be the same on prep. However, the multi-purpose gauge will not be used to ensure the pipe is inserted halfway into the lock ring coupling. The pipe on the first side of the fitting was locked halfway into the fitting. When the second pipe is inserted, visually inspect to verify that the install mark is partially covered by the fitting body. Lock the second side of the coupling. After hearing the clicking noise, begin the 3-point inspection. Check to see if the trailing edge of the fitting body protrudes from underneath the end of the drive ring. Check to see if the inspect mark is partially covered by the fitting and that most or all of the install mark is exposed. Check to see that the drive ring butts up against the tool flange. A small gap is acceptable as long as conditions 1 and 2 are met. Lastly, it is mandatory that the certified lock ring installer place his or her badge number on the fitting when the job is complete.